Hey everyone, new video series here, my analysis of the marvellous video game The Witness. Most of my subscribers won't have played this game before, so I'll give an outline of the game to start off with. In The Witness you play an unidentified character on a mysterious and surrealistic island setting. The island is full of puzzle boards which you have to solve in order to unlock certain portions of the island that were previously inaccessible. The puzzle boxes virtually always involve the player clicking on a circular starting point and then navigating a line along the correct path to an endpoint. Solve a puzzle and you unlock the next puzzle, or you trigger an environmental change. And pretty much every player stumbles at some point across the realization that there are interactable circles and pathways hidden in the environment outside the puzzle boxes. There are tons of these, and finding them requires the viewer to think about the environment as a two-dimensional surface instead of a 3D one. There's no overt plot in the game, but there are audio logs and video files to be found and unlocked which contain assorted quotes and ideas about science, philosophy and so on.
Of all the communities available to us, there's not one I would want to devote myself to, except for the Society of True Searchers, which has very few living members at any time. Albert Einstein, 1924.
You don't know why you're on the island, and upon completing the game, no overt explanation is given of what it was all about. However, the island contains mysterious clues that imply meaning, statues of people, different historical and temperate zones that shouldn't all exist in a single time on the same island. You can't die in the game, so you're free to take your time solving the puzzles. There are no enemies, in fact you seem to be completely alone. There aren't even any animals. It's a superb and highly original game, an unusual experience. And there are lots of theories floating around online and in media articles about what the game means. Many of them say that the game has no meaning, that it's all just a big red herring, and that if there is a message, then the message is that the search for meaning is futile. I call that the blank canvas theory because I've heard it before about other complex works of art like the movies of David Lynch. Yes, there are some so-called artists who produce deliberately meaningless creations and then say it's all about what the viewer projects into their product. If the artist has nothing to express themselves, then they may as well just hold up a literally blank canvas. But when a creative product is full of intentional design and detail, like The Witness comes along, a product which took about 7 years to make, it seems to me that the blank canvas theory is a cop-out when people aren't able to figure out what the artists or creators were expressing. In fact, I'd say that the opposite is true with The Witness. It's not a blank canvas, it's an overcrowded canvas. The problem is that the game has too much meaning, or, more to the point, too many layers of meaning. In other words, the whole thing can't be summed up in a simple news headline soundbite or a short, simplistic article. And the puzzle elements of the game itself, I think, are a great analogy for that complexity. There are single, specific solutions for near enough every overt puzzle in the game. Those solutions aren't generally open to interpretation. You either figure out the correct pathway through a maze or you don't. If you do, you progress. If you don't, you remain stagnant. But the game also throws tons of red herrings in our way, things that look like they might be interactable circles and pathways, but are just deceptively designed, decorative aspects of the environment. Deliberately deceptive elements that falsely imply the presence of interactable circles and pathways where there actually aren't any. A cynical player could see all these red herrings and conclude that there are no pathways at all except the ones in the puzzle boxes, but they'd be wrong, of course. For example, I was convinced that this cloud path formation was a red herring, a deliberately impossible pathway that couldn't be completed because of a grey cloud. But by redirecting this laser at the dark cloud to turn it white, the path can then be completed. So much for red herrings. So given all this complexity, instead of making a single video that claims to identify the meaning of The Witness, I intend to take the approach of making a series of shorter videos, each one identifying a specific meaningful facet of the game in a bite-sized chunk. It may turn out that in the same way that the island itself has distinctly separate regions which, when solved, each result in a separate beam of light firing at the mountain peak to allow access inside the mountain, It could be that each video in this series will point in the direction of some credible unifying theme, or maybe not. That remains to be seen. Another thing I want to do is to base my interpretations of the game as much as possible on what is observable. From what I've seen and read, most interpretations of the game leap to high-end philosophical conclusions without identifying a sensory observation-based pathway that naturally leads toward those conclusions. Most interpretations of the game tend to rely on the verbal information contained in the various video sequences and audio recordings, yet there is a ton of non-verbal sensory-specific information in the game that mostly isn't referenced in the verbal recordings. For example, behind the windmill is a patch of flowers shaped like the windmill. There are trees with optical illusion faces built into them, statues of people doing specific activities, a rock shaped like a tail, and so on. Any interpretation of the game that relies on the verbal recordings but doesn't account for the non-verbal details of the game is inadequate and incomplete in my opinion. So I want to keep my interpretation as grounded in sensory evidence as I can before making any attempt to reach for the verbal philosophical clouds later in the series. I just want to reiterate before finishing that I haven't formed a full interpretation of the game yet. I have tons of notes and lots of ideas, but I'm not committed to a full conclusion yet. So with each installment of this video, I'll be taking you along whatever path of interpretation I happen to be travelling down. So with all that said, let's move on to the first theme.